Good morning, everyone. Well, I'm finding this day very interesting. I'm sure you are too. And almost each of these topics could be a whole day unto themselves. So now we're going to talk about the tools of the trade. I'm Steve Foster, head of mobile at Pearson. As we know, publishing is in flux. That's why we're here. And digital is disrupting every part of the value chain of publishing, including production. So the topic of the panel is, what are the technology and the tools needed to increase productivity and increase sales? So what are those tools that make us more efficient, that production process, more effective in terms of quality assurance, more cost effective? Before we start, I just wanted to say, we're looking at tools now, but obviously, and John's slide alluded to this, that there's people, there's process, and there's technology. So you can have the best tools in the world. If your corporate culture or your people don't want to adopt that, then you're going to have trouble making those work for you. I also liked Ben's quote about how the publishing industry has been successfully broken for 400 years. So some tools that exist now, they're digital, but they're actually maintaining an inefficient way of working. And there are those tools that are disruptive, that really can change the production process. So you almost get good tools and bad tools. So just a quick introduction. You all know John Wheeler, Nelika Diaga, who is a digital publisher at NB Publishers. Michael Bashkar, who you met this morning, digital publishing director of Profile Books. Troy Hector, the managing executive for the division of Diversified Commerce and Industry, DCI at Telkom. And Arthur, you know well. Arthur, yeah. So at the break, Arthur said, Arthur's getting some great showtime today. You said you wanted to wear different hats for each panel. Which hat would you like to wear for this panel?
I'll wear my newest, most experimental hat, Book Dash, which is a volunteer program to create books. So if volunteers can create books, then we must be using sensible tools.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have a number of questions. The first one is, what digital publishing tools are adopted in other markets that we are yet to adopt? And there's an assumption here that out there is more progressive than we are. So perhaps we could also flip that. What tools do we have that the international markets don't have? Arthur, maybe we can start with you, because you're kind of very much in the digital publishing world.
I think one of the things that I've seen for years, when I started at Electric Bookworks in 2006, our first job was to help publishers with technical skills in-house. Because at the time, it was the beginnings of starting to think we needed to make some e-books. And the editors that people had to use, the editing tools, the equivalents of MS Word for the digital world, didn't exist yet. They really weren't there. They were a mess. And here we are 8 years later, and we're only beginning to get there. But for me, the most interesting tools to watch at the moment are what word processor-like tool will your particularly editorial staff use to create books in a digital-first world. So if you were to have to throw out MS Word and InDesign today and use something else that was digital-first, what would you use? And at the moment, there are no easy answers, but the ones I really like at the moment are editors like Aloha, which is an open source web-based editor for editing nice clean HTML content. My fellow Shuttleworth fellow, Kathy Fletcher, is working on a variant of that specifically for creating textbooks that enables lay people to create really great HTML-based textbooks without having to know any HTML code, just dragging and dropping. And we're only beginning to see those tools arrive now, and that's, for me, is really exciting to finally have them to work with.
Great, thank you, and good morning, everybody. So, from a Telkom standpoint, one of the key things and where we can play a very valuable role is actually getting the content to your end user. So, as much as you can develop all these innovative, all these sexy educational applications, the critical question is, how do you actually get that to the end user, be it in the classroom, be it in university, or in college? And effectively, we believe that there are three components as far as the tools are concerned in education. The one obviously is connectivity. So when you're sitting on campus and you're connecting the user via an optic fiber connection or a Wi-Fi or even a 3G, 4G connection, the connectivity component to that electronic content is going to be critically important. As we've scanned the market over the last year or two, one of the key challenges that a lot of the publishers have faced is how to get the content delivered reliably and securely to the end users. So the connectivity component is very, very critical. The second element is the element of cloud computing. And this obviously will disrupt your traditional bricks and mortar print and publisher because content is moving into the cloud. And the point is, if you're not going to do it, someone else is going to do it, whether it's your neighbor next door or somebody across the board or another continent, that is going to disrupt your business model going forward. So the cloud computing component is very, very critical. The third element is, and was mentioned in the previous discussion as well, is the fact is how do you monetize the content coming down to the end user itself. Today there's something called modular consumption, in the sense that instead of purchasing the entire textbook, why not just sell one chapter of the textbook as a whole? And the key thing that we need to keep in mind is that's going to become more pervasive going forward. So if you take iTunes, for example, and you take an artist that you like, you may not like all 12 songs on there, but you can purchase 1 or 2 of those songs and download them. And we believe that the tools you need to develop has to cater for that need in the marketplace going forward. So to summarize connectivity, cloud, and monetizing the content in a modular fashion, I think that'll be some of the key tools you're going to have to look out forward from a communication standpoint. Thank you.
So I think we're talking about technology, and there's this perception out there that book publishers in particular are not very au fait with technology, that book publishers don't really get technology. Well, the first thing I'd say to that is that it's absolutely rubbish historically. Book publishers haven't just been on the cutting edge of technology, they've been the ones inventing technology. And you can look at that going way back thousands of years to new forms of metallurgy, ceramic printing, paper making, making of ink. You can look at it in the Gutenberg press. You can look at it in steam presses and applications of steam technology and other industrial processes. You can look at it in warehousing and the ISBN and various sort of forms of automated moving of goods around. Internet book selling. It's no accident that it was books that were the first real commodity that were sold and traded on the internet. So whenever I hear people, as I often do in the technology world, sort of denigrate publishers as being incredibly backward, I just sort of reel out this string of things that over history publishers have done and contributed to. And that's because publishers are always having to be agile. They have to have brains that are looking at lots of different products, lots of different things, fighting hard commercially. Publishers can and have been on the forefront of technology. But I would just echo the point there though, today there is a danger that we'd fall behind. And that danger is not that the tools don't exist, it's just the internal resistance to using them. I can't believe how many startups I've spoken to who've built new tools and then they take them to publishers, and the startups just cannot understand the reaction of publishers who just sit there blank-faced. The startups think, why isn't this just changing their world? The publishers just think, oh, well, I can't really be bothered. So I think the biggest danger for publishers is that they forget, actually no, we publishers, we can be on the forefront, we can be driving things forward, and that's the attitude that we should take, and it's not always easy. Specifically, I think the tool that's making, or the tools that are making the biggest wave at the minute in the UK are all the kind of analytics, data analytics and interpretation software that essentially shows in much greater detail what your sales are, where they're going and why, and is supposed to help with decision making. I believe it's important, but I'm also sceptical, but I'll move on.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, interesting point. I'm glad you raised that as well about publishers normally being, I think, quite resilient in terms of processes and production-wise as well. From our side, I think one of the biggest things we've learned is that making, specifically ebooks, is a very iterative process. So it's the whole concept of software development, whether it's extreme programming or agile programming, that you really have to view the product never as a final entity, but something that has to be revised over and over again. When new criteria comes out from your digital warehouse internationally or locally, metadata is the same thing. You need to revise your metadata the whole time. So for us in particular, we mostly a trade publishing house, so we can't really standardize our templates for ebooks as much as, say, an educational or academic publisher could do. I know our sister company is looking at, two of our sister companies are looking at Woodwing, for instance, at the moment, to see in which way they can use Woodwing to then pump out 2 different platforms, but it is expensive, we're all very aware of that. What I'm fascinated by, is not just the production side of this, but actually the title management side of it. I think we've all realized that metadata is becoming crucially important in terms of everyone having immediate access to everything and being able to update information automatically, being able to feed that through to your websites, to your content metadata on Amazon, whether it be on Kobo. Yeah, and then the third point I just want to make is that we also have a dictionary division. And one of the fantastic things that we've learned in-house there, specifically because of their own technical skills, you can't split technical skills from lexicography, I think, is that they have an XML first approach, so that all their content is edited in XML, and that makes us capable of actually publishing our content in a non-linear format to subscription websites. And I think that's something I've missed in the conversations thus far this morning, is that there's still a lot of discussions about books just being a contained unit or as a Gutenberg format. And I think that's something we really have to look at locally in South Africa as well, and not just seeing content as a book unit, as a unified container. It's not that at all. Look at what Inkling is doing internationally, for instance.
Right. My background is more in the content manufacturing area, and I just want to say that where I've seen the biggest strides being made, both in tools and in publishers that are using them, are in things like Inkling. She mentioned the name. I wasn't going to mention the name. But in the whole variety of what I call collaborative content creation and editing tools, where basically a number of people can work on content, a number of people can edit content, they can roll content back, they can push a button and see what it might look like. There's a huge advance that has just happened, in those tools. Inkling isn't the only one. You might look at a company called MetroDigi. They have a product called Chaucer. Very, very good product that way. Another thing that I've seen happening in organizations that have a lot of digital content already is all the tools that are being used for what's known as big data being applied to that content. And the place I've seen it most is in the scientific journal community, where in a lot of cases in the US, if you're taking public money to do research, all of your work that went into that journal article is supposed to be submitted as well. And so publishers are scratching their head about, what are they going to do with these terabytes of information that comes to them that might have ended up in a half-page journal article. But there's all of the basic research is part of the domain as well. And there's ways to apply big data to that research and actually use that research to come up with other conclusions in other ways. So something else to look at.
Great, thank you. What about, Lenica, just continuing on your point about metadata and Onyx 3. Does everybody know what Onyx 3 is? I'm afraid I had to look it up myself yesterday. Did you? Okay. So, maybe you could tell us briefly about Onyx 3.
Well, can I get my iPad? I can send a link on to everyone. Onyx 3 is just far more nuanced metadata than what I think most of us are using at the moment. So, much more detailed information, even such as including a city that a contributor lives in, far more detailed categorization, far more detailed information about keywords. And I think it just stresses the point again about how it's forced the publishing industry to never see its data as final either. That you keep having to redesign and rework the data to make it more and more accessible to everyone. My counter concern to that is that I think I'm seeing a slight disjunction between the work that we are doing on metadata and to what extent that's actually being displayed on e-tailers' websites. Maybe our international partners can actually talk about that a little bit, because I'm not too familiar with to what extent that's actually reflected on sites yet. So I think it's a very good exercise for all of us to carry on working on that, but I think there's a slight disjunction between what we're capable of processing locally on local e-tailers, but also even the major international players. So.
And do you think, Michael, perhaps you could answer that question, but do you think that South Africa is doing enough, the publishers here, to tag with metadata and to adopt these standards? Or let's say they are adopting them, but are they applying them effectively?
I think they are. Look, I think there's always a gap for doing some excellent metadata courses, and maybe that's something one can put on an action list if someone's keeping an action list like that together. Because there's always new ways of approaching it. It's something we discuss internally all the time. I mean, I checked on Amazon the other day. Obviously, Dion Meyer is a very big author of ours. So I typed in Dion Meyer, and after Dion Meyer comes this self-published book that I've never heard of before. And this man was very clever because he put Dion Meyer in as a keyword. And that's very clever, so I think there's a lot we can still learn about how to do it. I know that some of our competitors are doing very good work. I'm not going to mention it on stage. But I think everyone's learned a lot. For me, the bigger issue has to do with consolidating that data in-house and being able to have access to it. That's a very big job for a company that publishes 400 to 500 titles a year. It's not an easy story. So.
We don't use Onyx 3, but I would say we are 100% reliant on Onyx as the bibliographic data standard. It just is really essential. It makes life so much easier and so much more important. And I honestly can't imagine working without it. I think the whole question of metadata actually is often not really a technological question, it's a skills question. And actually I think the people who are doing this best are somewhat sadly the biggest publishers, and I think that's just because they've realised this is an area where you throw resource at it and it's all good. I think the key thing about metadata to remember is that metadata isn't something that's difficult, it's just describing the book. And this is why editors should be much closer and should be more involved with metadata. They understand the book, they know the book, they'll know what sells. It's just a skill at being able to say, if you like this, you might like this, or these are a good bunch of words. There are the little hacks that you can do on Amazon. And I know there is this whole kind of little black hat industry of people tagging their names with other stuff, getting people to buy all their books at once and that kind of thing. But actually, metadata is just about understanding what a book is and then making sure that that's just communicated in every possible way. Again, the main barrier to publishers not having better metadata is publishers themselves, because it's a chore. It sounds boring. It doesn't sound like the kind of thing that editors really want to be doing, but it should be. And there's no reason why any publisher, wherever they are in the world, can't be doing better metadata with Onyx.
Arthur, do you want to add something?
I just wanted to mention there that I think a lot of publishers are going to be hiring a lot of librarians soon. So as libraries fall away, publishers can hire those librarians because they're great taxonomists. They understand that, which is fantastic. I want to pick up on something Jonathan, I think, alluded to, and the power of collaborative editing tools in the production process. When I was particularly when I was a school book publisher, and you'd have these teams of authors that you'd commission and then expect a manuscript from 3 months later. I was working in that field in about 2005 last directly, and I wish that I'd been able to write my manuscripts collaboratively with those authors so I could watch them being written during the time, so that I wouldn't have to assume that the author's actually going to write the entire manuscript in the 3 days before the deadline that I gave them. But we can actually work on it together. That's been even taken a bit further by companies like O'Reilly, who actually sell advanced access to manuscripts while they're being written to consumers who need to be at the cutting edge of their material. So in the case of O'Reilly, they often write reference guides to very new technologies. And if you're a new technologist that needs to be up to date with that, you'll spend $100 on advanced access to the manuscript while it's being written, so that you're ahead of everyone else. So I think collaborative editing and reading tools are really exciting. Just to name a few, my favorite one is actually simply Google Docs. Google Docs and Google Spreadsheets are probably the single most valuable tool in all the ventures I've been a part of in the last couple of years. Increasingly online annotation, the ability to leave comments on particular words or phrases or paragraphs for teams to work on. Right now, a very exciting project in the US called Hypothesis that's working on annotation for the web. A great tool called Prose.io that is a very easy editor to use, but actually stores the content on GitHub. For those geeks in the room, you'll know how cool that is, because that gives you amazing version control. But if you need really robust version control, Prose.io with GitHub. There are WordPress-based systems like Pressbooks that are essentially using WordPress plugins to turn WordPress into a book publishing process. And all of these tools are essentially free. That's the amazing thing. And I think that the key is not when you start working with collaborative editing tools to start spending money on day one. I think that would be a terrible idea as a publisher. as a publisher, start using these really simple free tools, and then decide, what do I need next? What's the next battle whistle I need? And then start talking to people with more powerful stuff.
What about
Just got one thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk about metadata and the power of this, the markup and like that. And I just want to tie that back into one of the first, I think the panel before this. What I've seen in publishers is they all understand how important markup is and having this metadata associated with their content. Not just at the book level, but at the chapter, section level as well. And what we find is that everybody wants everything marked up 7 ways from Sunday, but nobody has the time or resources to do it. Can you say startup?
Is this something we could outsource to, I don't know, to India? And I mean, should an editor actually, when they submit the title, supply some, first step, the metadata? Do they already?
Yes, that's okay.
Okay. What about digital first? Is South Africa ready to go in our publishing houses here today? Are we ready to go digital first in terms of production, in terms of kind of, the whole business strategy? John, do you want to have a go?
I was interested in the stats that Ben showed earlier because I think from a sales perspective it really also depends on local publishing versus international content being sold locally. The reason why I mentioned that is because digital first products are fabulous to do when they start making money. So we've done a variety of experiments, some of which have done well, some of which haven't. They've all been fun to do, I can add that maybe. I think it's very important to do, and I think it's a very good learning curve, especially from specific editorial teams that actually drive it themselves. So we've got a fantastic series called Tafelberg Short, Tafelberg Court, which is a range of narrative non-fiction, current affairs. We've just published one on Kindler, for instance, that's come out a couple of weeks back. So we do a couple of digital firsts like that. We're also doing audiobooks that is a hell of a lot of fun. It's exclusively available on Audible. It's making lots of money on that. And so there's a range of stuff. And then we've also got an app, which is a children's book app store for Afrikaans content for kids from age 2 to 8. And I would call that digital first very soon as well, because we're going to start launching digital-only content on there. At the moment, we're repackaging current content. But I would view that very much kind of as a digital first project as well, because it's not just a paper book that's being relaunched as an ebook. There's a whole lot of work and audio involved in that. So I think the important thing, like previous panelists were saying as well, is to do a range of experiments and to see what works and what doesn't. And then take it from there. Process-wise, it's also a very good exercise for the in-house editorial and sales teams to learn about how do you market a product like that's digital only. Internationally as well, the stats show that it's still easier to sell something online if there's a paper edition as well. It's just, stats just show, I'm sure Michael will be able to reiterate that. Yeah. So.
Just for Quentin's sake, how much does your audiobook version go compared to the print version?
Man, that's an interesting question. Interesting because Audible actually determines their own selling prices. Yeah, it's really tricky. It's very different from where you supply a digital list price to, say, Amazon or someone else. They actually determine their own price. So we make suggestions, and they have ballpark figures in terms of how you can estimate what it should be sold at, but the decision actually relies with them at the end of the day. But it's been fantastic. I mean, to have 20-odd Afrikaans audiobooks online that have never been available before, that's great, and it's an experiment, and we might not be making money right now, but it's fantastic to do. So.
Troy, just to pick up on what you were saying earlier, one of the questions was around these tools that we use, which ease production, but they're also kind of challenges. I mean, these tools exist in an ecosystem, like you were saying. Beyond the production, I mean, even just to produce collaboratively, you need that connectivity, you need bandwidth, and then just so on. You need the infrastructure. Is South Africa ready? Is our market, is our bandwidth, our infrastructure, our setup here ready to go much more digital? Yeah.
I would like to believe it is. And I come from an engineering background, so maybe just one or two observations, and maybe just some insights as well. So, in telecommunications, you have a set of standards, irrespective of where you communicate from and to, everybody's utilizing the same technical standard. So I can make a call from Johannesburg to Moscow in Russia, and the person will be able to get that call routed reliably, clearly, and the conversation can take place. What I have seen in a very brief sort of exposure to the publishing market is that everybody seems to be having a different set of standards and proprietary protocols, which I think will potentially be a challenge going forward. So the communication to a device, I think, is all taken care of because everybody's talking about internet protocol layer going forward. But once you reach the application on the desktop, the question that needs to be asked is whether that device and that application makes you read the content you're trying to serve to that particular user. So I'm not aware of any international standard that sort of governs the way educational content is served to users, but I think the element of standardization, I think, will become a very critical component going forward. To answer your question more directly, I would like to believe that South Africa, both from a mobile and a fixed point of view, is ready to transition into the digital time frame. It's already written into the policy documents on the National Education Departments, and I think it's going to take a political will, a capital investment will, and also a drive from the publishers to try and get the content into the marketplace. There will be those who will be reluctant because obviously their bread and butter is associated with the normal bricks and mortar and print paper format. And I think going forward there will be an element of disruption in those business models going forward. But I would like to attest here today that from a communications point of view, if we can deliver a World Cup in 2010 for FIFA, if we can do elections, if we can do the big bang in terms of activity, we can do it for education and publishers in the country at this point in time.
I had a kind of lead-on question for Troy, if I may ask a question. One of the risks with digital products and publishers moving towards more and more digital products is that while we solve a whole lot of our own distribution and production headaches, we create a whole new set of I suppose, consumption headaches for our consumers. We expect them to be able to get online, use electricity, have a device, know how to use them, all those things. So one of the key sales tools I see only beginning to catch on now, but I think could be very promising, is zero rating data. Is that something that Telkom is involved in, or are you just providing the kind of layer and you hope everyone else catches on? Like, how much do you think Telkom is interested in enabling an environment that encourages zero rating, particularly for education?
Okay, so as a commercial enterprise, of course, we need to make revenues and profits, but I think just from the monetizing point of view, so the way you can actually zero rate the transfer of the traffic onto a tablet device is by utilizing a fixed line optic fiber overlaid by a Wi-Fi infrastructure. So if you're on campus, you can enable a tablet device, access the Wi-Fi infrastructure, the institution, be it the school, the college or university, pays for that infrastructure, and you can download the content at no cost to the tablet device as well. So that's one way you can actually zero rate the traffic going forward. Of course, you also need to make provision for the fact that once the learner or student gets off campus, they should still be able to get access to that content reliably. Unfortunately, there you will still have an element of getting access to a data bundle, paying for that, consuming the content, and actually having that downloaded onto the tablet device as a whole. So from a Telkom standpoint, as much as we would like to offer a free education service, commercially that will not be feasible at this point in time, but I would like to believe that as we work with government, as we work with blue chip companies on CSI initiatives, as we work with individual fund holders like the Patrice Motsepe Foundation, that element can be funded in one form or the other to make it more affordable for educational content in South Africa.
Thank you. Okay, let's take a last question before a few from the floor. Michael, getting back to your point about agile, I like your description of the publishing industry has always been agile and it's always been kind of at the edge and innovative. That's certainly not a view that's widely shared, but I like it.
But it is historically accurate.
Okay. Well, at Pearson, we're making a big drive towards agile. So I sit within the innovation lab, the way that we work, the way that we approach our strategy, our process, we're adopting agile software methodologies. So I wanted to know from the other panelists, John, you kind of pointed to it on one side. Are you experiencing the same? Is this, this tying with this look to startups as inspiration, as fresher, kind of quicker ways of working, and trying to kind of bring some of that thinking into traditionally quite a formulaic industry in many ways, perhaps innovative in its kind of the ways that it produces or outputs, but pretty much a set formula to the process.
I've absolutely seen that. If I remember, I know working on some medical reference books on a 4-year revision cycle, and it wasn't because that's how long it took for medicine to change. It was because that's how long it took them to grind through the process of doing these books. And when the agile processes or the agile methodology was put in place, whether or not it was truly agile or not, but, iterative content, as one of my colleagues pointed out, actually knowing that your contributor is working on something because he's online and you can see that he's downloaded this manuscript or he's up, once they were able to start doing that, well, now you can, we had a concept called living books, where monthly, the updates, the new science was inserted into the e-product of the book itself. And so, I've seen, agile methodologies employed, in this industry, especially on the editorial side.
I agree with you. I think it goes on both product and on process. I think one of the things that the digital interventions in the last couple of years in the South African industry has forced us to do is to really relook at our processes and try and eliminate double work and really seeing the whole process of making books and improving processes as an incremental step, one after the other. And I think also the learning curve that we've had in the last couple of years in working with software developers. I often make the joke and say that I view working with a software developer as working with an author, because they are as creative and they're always late. It's a hell of a privilege working with them. And I think it's been fantastic for us to work with those devs to see how they approach their products, whereas it's never something that is finished, never, ever, ever. You always improve every step of the way. And I think that's been a very good learning curve for us. So.
I would say, I'm going to talk about this after lunch a bit. It's not necessarily the agile approach that is needed. I think it's more of what I would call a lean approach, and I won't say too much now. I think there's a lot that can be contributed from things like agile approaches, but the point that I would again make is this isn't about technology. Agile approaches are a way of human beings to work together in a different way to the kind of old-fashioned top-down project management, Gantt charts and all of that kind of thing. It's not a technology, it's about organisation, it's about human beings. And this, I think, is just, again, the key point, actually. The challenge isn't about this or that technology, it's not about having this or that coders and this and that programming language involved. It's actually just having people who do not feel threatened by any of this, because it's not threatening, people who are roughly educated, and people who are going to find good ways of working on it. That's the big challenge.
Arthur, do you want to add anything, or you good?
No, I think we will work with any content publisher in the marketplace, because I think for any e-learning or digital education to succeed in the marketplace, the element of connectivity, communication to the end user is critically important. And as your business models transition from the paper-based solution to the more e-learning platform, your communication connectivity will play a very critical role. So we certainly are there to collaborate with the publishers in the marketplace.
Great, thank you. Folks, we have 3 minutes. Are there any questions from the floor, please? I understand this is the last thing between you and lunch, so it's a tough one.
Okay, my question might remind you of lunch, because it starts with the letters M-E-T-A, which you can also rearrange into neat, but it concerns metadata. Not so much a question as suggesting. I'm so glad the issue was raised. I'm kind of involved in building a digital library for print impaired persons, a global library, and it's so important, to make titles discoverable. And I think it's a long, there's still some way for us as South African publishers to go with that. I just wonder whether Navika or somebody else can think of getting together some kind of meeting, perhaps at a BASA meeting or something like that, where we can learn more about Onyx. Yeah, I also wanted to add that as we are getting more opportunities to sell digital material worldwide, it's so important to have as many discoverable words, linked to that title as possible. So it's perhaps an opportunity and a need for us to learn more and standardize perhaps among South African publishers as well. Thank you.
Nicole, I think in the meantime, a very good reference that we all make use of in-house. It's mostly free, sometimes you can pay, but it's Digital Book World. I think we're all aware of it. It's Michael Schatzkin drives it, and for those who are not able to fly to New York and go and attend their conference once a year, I think try and at least subscribe to their newsletter. They have fantastic webinars on metadata, and it's really, really worthwhile. I can recommend it to everyone on the floor if they haven't actually seen it yet. So.
Anything else? And on that, we'll also offers training in metadata. That's right. Okay, great. So you can always bring him in. Folks, okay, let's wrap that. Thanks very much. Bon appetit, and please thank our panelists.